we've got to start putting him in a position where we could reassure him two things. One is that nothing scary is going to happen. So these snapping behaviors that you're seeing out of him, if you look at the reason why he's doing it, the reason why he's doing it is kind of like a I'm going to get you before you get me kind of thing. He has a perceived sense of like these people are scary, and before they do anything scary to me, I've got to just make them go away, right? So
Yeah.
we've got to reassure him that that's not actually going to happen. And then in order to do that, we've got to make sure that as we're starting to have these interactions happen in the first place, that when he inevitably goes to do his quick, I don't want to say harmless snap, but like minor, not necessarily he's trying to kill you snap, but he's trying to set a boundary, that the people that are interacting with him are able to safely not stop the interaction. Hey, how are you?
Good.
All right.
I'm not very good with Zoom, so hopefully.
That's all right. You did the hardest part, which is get on and have your camera on. So
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I got your email you sent me. I've got it here pulled up in front of me, obviously on Riggins and Rudy. Obviously, the majority of the issues are with Riggins, but it seems like Rudy kind of follows suit with a lot of the stuff, sans the actual aggression, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He's like the pre-barker and
Yeah,
will where Riggins doesn't really bark. And it's very selective and it has gotten better.
yeah,
Um, and I've noticed like I gave you the backstory of the beginning of how, Riggins would like I couldn't even take him for, even though we have, 200 acres, I would make a point to bring him in town and walks and
yeah,
track supply and all that bullshit. And the lunging. So I kind of stopped with that. But since I started using the Herm Springer and doing e-collar training, I can walk anywhere with him and that's not a problem. But I don't take him into enclosed he doesn't like being in like buildings with people, you know what I mean?
mhm.
But I can go on walks, meet people on trails, even off leash and call them and it's not no problem.
Yeah. It's really only if they try to actually interact with him.
Yeah, it seems like it's very fear based. Like I can have like a month ago, he met my sister and her husband for the first time, and I make him sit and stay.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'll release them, and I tell the people that you want to come up and sniff you, and I said just don't touch them and don't make eye contact. And
Yeah.
then they will see that we're interacting with the people, and then they're fine. Bring them in the house, they're fine.
Mhm.
Um, like I at the dog kennel that I mean I'm sure there's set that was a fear-based bite.
Yeah.
Um and then a couple weeks before that, um I let my guard down and thought he'd come up from the pond to the house and he was on my property and they went back to where we were and they were fine with the guy going up to him. It wasn't until he reached down and looked
Yeah.
at his tags and did that.
Mhm.
So
And every time he does have these like biting incidents, is it just like a quick snap and that's it? Or
yep, it's not a latch on.
yeah,
The It's definitely like when service, like if I have like my propane filled up or
sure.
fuel filled up. Um and for a while it was like, okay, I make him sit and watch and wait and it'd be fine. All of a sudden he'd bolt and it would be like a nip on the pant leg,
Yeah.
you know. I've been very fortunate, all these guys, we kind of, I've been very fortunate I have been sued.
Yeah.
Um and so I'm we're all on the same page now where I have to advocate for them and be like, yeah, just like I had two guys come to the house yesterday to work on the house.
Yep.
And my daughter's like, "Oh, why don't you just let them, see them?" I'm like, "No, no freaking way." I
Yeah.
said, "Nope." They saw them. I brought them out to their outdoor kennel because they had to come in and out of the house.
Mhm.
And one of them barked once, but it wasn't like the old school, like lunging on the cage and going ballistic. But
Yeah. And additionally, when you have these bites, what is the severity of them? Is it like broken skin and stuff, or is it just a quick
the
nip?
first, yeah, nip. The first one, what happened? When I told you, 11 months old.
Yeah.
They were outside, and it was. This is no excuse, but it was like an 80-year-old guy, my neighbor,
Yeah.
and I think he just went up like that, and I think it. I saw it was like one drop of blood because he has paper thin skin.
Yeah.
It
I got
wasn't a latch on. Okay, and then the other ones to the guys were all on the pant leg, like a warning.
yeah. Okay.
And then, but this one a couple weeks ago, that when they got away from the pond, he did break skin on his finger because when you reach down.
Yeah.
to he did do that. I haven't seen Rudy bite anybody.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm living a life now, which is fine. Like after listening to you guys, no Rottweilers the same, no golden retrievers the same. And these
Sure.
guys aren't going to be the dogs I've had before where they sit on the porch and wait for me to come home from work.
Sure.
Those days are done. And
Sure.
that's fine. Um, so I'm being proactive with them and trying to not set them up for failure.
Yeah.
So
And it sounds like a lot of what you've done so far has been, what we would call management, which is just not put them in a position where this is going to happen, right? Which is the first step as we're working through this, obviously, is like, let's minimize the dogs rehearsing it so that we're not, making the habit worse or, developing a worse pattern or anything like that. But at a certain point, we've got to address it head on. You know what I mean? And have you ever done any muzzle conditioning with him? Has he ever wore a muzzle before?
um to go to the vets, yeah. I could put it on him and he doesn't like try to take it off or anything.
So obviously, I think you know this. We've got to start putting him in a position where we could reassure him two things. One is that nothing scary is going to happen. So these snapping behaviors that you're seeing out of him, if you look at the reason why he's doing it, the reason why he's doing it is kind of like a I'm going to get you before you get me kind of thing. He has a perceived sense of like these people are scary and before they do anything scary to me, I've got to just make them go away, right? So
Yeah.
we've got to reassure him that that's not actually going to happen. And then in order to do that, we've got to make sure that as we're starting to have these interactions happen in the first place, that when he inevitably goes to do his quick, I don't want to say harmless snap, but like minor, not necessarily he's trying to kill you snap, but he's trying to set a boundary, that the people that are interacting with him are able to safely not stop the interaction. Right. So the first step of working through these kinds of things is take away the reinforcement behind the behavior. The reinforcement behind the behavior is that historically, every time he snaps at somebody, what do? They stop whatever it is that they're doing. So that becomes a very self-reinforcing behavior. It feels really good for him to gain control over a situation like that where he's stressed out, he's scared, right? That's the first step of working through this. So what I would generally do in this scenario, if we were to do like an in-person session, is I would have you put a muzzle on him. I would have you have him free, and then I would just go to pet him, right? And as I went to go pet him, I would see what happens, right? He goes to do the snap. Okay, after that snap, what does he do? Does he retreat? Does he stay right where he is, right? From there, I go to do it again. And I do that a handful of times until I hit a point where it's like, okay, one of two things is going to happen. One is he's either going to intensify the behavior, right? Because he's used to it working and he's going to try basically harder the next time to see if he could, successfully get the person to go away. And at that point, I would then consider, okay, maybe we need to add in a correction for this behavior in order to actually reduce it and see an inhibition of it. Or two is after a handful of times of going to touch him and him giving a little snap to try to get me to go away, is he's going to realize it doesn't work and you're going to see him do something else, which is generally going to be just sit there and allow you to do the interaction, which then reassures him that nothing scary actually is happening, right? It's just, nobody's hurting you or anything. It's just a pat, nothing painful is happening, nothing scary is happening. Or we'll see them kind of like submit to it a little bit and they'll like lay down or chill out or something like that. But we've got to get that feedback first and foremost of what he's actually going to do if, like I said, when he goes to do that, we continue doing whatever it is that we're trying to do in that moment, right? That's the very
Okay.
first piece of information that we need.
Okay.
So, the hard part about this is generally speaking, unless it's like a contractor you really know and trust, I generally would only do this with people that I really know. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
you need to have somebody where you can kind of pre-talk them through the process, pre-make sure
Yes.
they obviously know what to expect as you go to do this, and make sure that they trust that, hey, if he does go to do something, I'll be able to stop him. It's not a big deal. Like he's not gonna kill you or anything, obviously.
Yeah.
Trust you have the safety protocols in place. So my question for you is, do you have anybody locally that could help you with something like this?
So I have somebody I could test it out on. But
Yeah.
so my question is, do I just let the person come up to my house and greet them like I would anybody else, like before I had when I had good dogs, whatever? Or do I make them sit and stay and say, wait?
Well, yeah, no, good question. So you have two types of socialization you're going to be doing with this dog. You have actual interaction socialization, and then you have what we'll call like environmental socialization. So
Okay.
if I were doing environmental socialization, I would be just getting my dog used to being around people and around dogs and around new places, right? And in that time, I'm going to be keeping him focused on specific tasks, right? So whether it's a sit, whether it's a down, whether it's my heeling or my
Yeah.
leash walking skills. And during those stages, I'm not going to let anybody interact with him. If they look at him and say, "Oh, what a cute dog," or something like that, whatever, not a big deal. I expect my dog to ignore that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to let them actually come into his space and try to pet him, right?
Yeah.
Um, when I'm doing actual interaction socialization, I want my dog to be able to freely move around and move towards or away from the things that they're uncomfortable with. And I want to simply be there to guide their decision making as best as I can, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would have him totally free to do whatever he wants to do. And there's a line here because let's say you have him free, you've got his muzzle on, you've got his e-collar on, you have your guest come over who's going to try to interact with him, and they go to try to interact with him, and he goes, "Nope, see ya," and takes off and runs the other way. Like we have to know to step in and advocate in that situation because that's him making a proper choice, right? So
Yeah, right.
we want to do is in his mind the thing that is reinforced that makes people go away is lunging or snapping, right?
Yeah.
Where we want to shift that to the thing that makes people go away is avoidance, right? So trying to go somewhere else, trying to actively get away from the person. So let's say, they go pet him and he gets all stiff and then just walks away. That would be my cue to step in and be like, "All right, that's enough. Leave him alone." Right? Because he
Yep.
did exactly what we want. And I want him to realize, right? If I get stressed, I could just go somewhere else. Right. So
Yeah.
we're repatterning in flight is the appropriate response in that situation. Interact with him, however, would be a natural, normal thing. And then, see what you get. And like I said, the first handful of times you do this, I generally try to avoid adding a correction in right off the rip because for many dogs, particularly when it's fear based and particularly when the snapping is not very intense, where you're not getting like dogs that are like really like breaking skin or pursuing or things like that, you could get away with just repatterning this and just shifting their association without the need of a whole lot of corrections. We see that commonly, like when we do vet visits with dogs and stuff like that. It's just once you get past that initial contact and they realize, "Oh my God, the hand of the person is on me. It's so terrible." And then they're like, "Wait,
Yeah.
okay, this isn't that bad," right? That's that
Right.
moment is so critical. And I don't want to add a ton of extra stress into it. But if I go through this process a bunch of times and it's like clearly every single time we go in this situation, he snaps at them first before we get to that point. It's like, okay, well, we can't have you snapping at people still. We do need to add in a correction to kind of suppress that a little bit so we can get our breakthrough at that point.
Mother effers have put me through the ringer, and my
I get it.
uh my anxiety has been put on them. I'm way calmer now. I have no like their
Well,
limits,
listen,
but
it's understandable. You know what I mean? Like it's normal for you to be a little bit stressed out and anxious when you have dogs that are like trying to bite people, right?
yeah.
I get that for sure. And you're also in a really hard circumstance where like not a lot of people live on 200 acres and have people constantly on their property. Like it's not like you could just like look around and have a bird's eye view of like everything going on around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
actually a harder situation. And like a lot of the things I generally would recommend people do, which is like, introduce like when we have most people call us and say, "Hey, my dog is biting people that come over the house." I say, "Okay, well, your process is have the people come in the door, have your dogs on a bed stay, do that for 20 minutes, release them off, right? Have them muzzled, do the interactions." Like I would have this like real like whole process where it's like everything is pre-planned and we just
Yeah.
make sure the scenario goes good every time. But like that doesn't fit with your life with the dogs, which is why
Yeah.
I'm saying like we have to train for the picture that they're going to see. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We have to train
100%.
the picture that they're going to see, which is there are going to be times random people just show up on the property, and there are going to be times those random people just try to pet them. And, we want to try to make sure it's happening as infrequently as possible. Or I should say, we want to make sure we want to try to make sure it's happening where we can control it as frequently as possible. But there are going to be times it happens and you're not fully ready for it. So
100%. Yeah.
training for that picture, it preps you for the one-off chance where it's like, we're caught off guard. The muzzle isn't on, the e-collar isn't on for whatever reason, and somebody reaches down to try to pet him.
The real life situation in my property is if
Yeah.
I'm out, they're both out.
Yep.
So I probably do you think I should get a second muzzle for the other dog? Because I'm not saying he hasn't bit,
Yeah.
but and a natural situation is someone pulls up to the driveway. I'm like, oh, I was hanging out clothes on the line, and oh, someone's here, and I got two dogs with two muzzles. Should I go get a second one?
That's your call. If you feel like there's a possibility that other dog is going to be a bite risk, then I would say yes. Now, another thing you can do simultaneously here is because there are going to be circumstances where workers are coming and you don't want them to be interacting at that point, right? So
Yeah.
my question for you is, let's say somebody shows up on the property, you're whatever gardening or something, and you're out with the dogs, and suddenly they see a person 40 yards away or something, and they go running towards them. How good are they about recalling back to you when you need them to in that moment?
Pretty good. And I could see someone coming from far away with a dog. I'll say, Riggins, come. Rudy, come. And I'll tap the tone. I won't shock them. Tone, and they come right back. I put their leashes on. We continue walking.
So why do you give the tone with the verbal command? Like, are
Uh,
they not responding to the verbal command, which is why you need to give the tone? Or
uh, Probably because I'm nervous that they won't, but I should, am I messing with their head? Should I just say their names and come?
well, listen, what there are especially people that have large properties, like some people will train that either tone or vibration, like is the come command, right? So they hear you don't even have to say come, you just hit tone and the dogs
Yep.
know to come back to you.
Yep.
But other people will not consciously be doing that and they'll be using the tone almost like a warning, right? So it's like
Yep.
I say come and it's like tone comes right after, like, hey, you better come or else the stim is going to come after kind of thing. Which that I try to avoid doing. So what I would say is pick one or the other, right? Whether you're going to use your
Yep.
verbal command, which I usually like using verbal command because there's times the e-collar's not going to be on, obviously, and then just back it up with the e-collar stim if they don't do it,
Yep.
right? Because you need to get them responding verbally, not without any type of tool doing the work. The tool is just there to enforce the command if needed, right?
Yep. If they are, before I got the invisible fence hooked back up, which I still don't trust it that much, but
Yeah.
they go around the bend into the woods and
Mhm.
I'd yell and they couldn't hear me. Right. So then, but they can hear the tone because sometimes it's windy, they don't hear it, and they'll come to the tone
Cool.
unless they're in. So they come to both.
Yeah, and that's fine. And you could use them interchangeably. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like I said,
Yep.
I would suggest that if you're in a situation where they can hear you, don't use the come and the tone, right?
Okay.
Um,
One or the other.
one or the other. One or the other. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. No tone.
Or one
So,
thing, if you want to keep it just really black and white, you can give verbal command plus tone at the same time, right? So come,
yep.
come, come. That way, because what I don't want is I don't want them stacked where it's like come, then tone, because like I
Right.
said, then you're using the tone. The tone might be they might be waiting for the tone to respond then at that point. So at
Yep.
least you say come and tone. If they didn't hear your come, we know they definitely heard tone.
Yeah. And I've done that and that works good too.
Okay. So
Um,
I would do that. And then, like I said,
okay.
stim, if they don't respond to that. And with these
Yep.
types of things, this leads me to my next kind of question here is how high do you work these dogs on the e-collar usually?
I'm at, I have that, which one did I tell you? The yellow one. What's it called?
A mini educator.
Mini Educator. That
Yeah.
thing's confusing, but I got it down now. So right now it's set at 70 for both of them,
Okay.
and it'll stop them. I'm not saying in their tracks, but it'll stop them. Like just say they're chasing a rabbit, which I don't really give two shits. Half of them need to be gone anyway, my property. But
Yeah.
if it gets them off, they start veering towards like not our property because we're on the edge of it,
Yeah.
and they're chasing a rabbit. And if I 70 will stop them, but if it's like I don't know what it would be like if there was a deer
Yep.
running. I, I at the beginning when they were lunging at people, I
Yep.
had that thing on 90,
Yep.
but I've backed off now because they're getting older. They seem to be responding to the 70 pretty well.
Yeah.
And I only use it if, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, how often do you find yourself actually giving a correction? Daily,
Uh,
multiple times a day? Like,
no, no,
okay.
no, I can like if they're, I was just listening to the girls' podcast from the other day and like talking about using it like with chasing the cats in the house or, uh, if I say stop in the house, I don't ever use the e-collar in the house. They listen.
Yeah. Okay.
We're very strict and we're all on the same page and I'm not loosey goosey. I just have some dogs that have they
Yeah.
have a high prey drive and a stranger danger.
Yep.
Everything else they listen to me. If we come in the house, they're kennel trained. I don't use it that much, but I use it for, if they've been tired, but mostly if they chase the cats and they didn't listen to me and then they find, I said, go get in your kennel and they go and they lie down.
Okay, so follow-up question to that. With
Yeah.
the prey drive, in your perfect world, would they be allowed to chase all the animals and stuff as long as they stop when you ask them to, or would you prefer they don't do it at all?
I don't want them to do it all. That's stupid. Yeah,
You
they're no. I
you
don't want them to. I'm sorry, what?
no, you said you don't want them to do it at all. Is that what you said?
No, they don't need to be chasing animals. I don't really care. I guess
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how, yeah, I mean, to me, I don't give a shit if they chase a squirrel. But
Sure.
then to them, it's like, well, I could chase a squirrel, but I can't chase that deer. I'm
Yeah,
confused.
it's a fine line because you could tack in like when you look at prey drive, right? You mentioned the cats. I'm assuming these are like your resident cats in the house.
Yeah, and they have a coexisting. Like I can go to work and everyone's a house. It's not a problem. It's more of just like
Yeah,
they're kind of like a Lenny. Do you know what I mean? From Mice and Men, kind of just like they want to clean them. And but
yeah, yeah.
cats don't. They said no. You know what I mean?
Sure. So yeah, obviously you'll see it with cats, then squirrels, and like you said, deer, then like you mentioned, bear, right? If a bear shows up on the property, obviously we don't really want the dogs chasing the bear, right? And then it could turn into that impulsiveness if they're constantly practicing in the yard, see an animal, and before they even have a chance to think about it, it's this mindless, I gotta go get it. That's a very similar thing you're seeing to when people show up on the front or on the
Yeah.
property, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I agree with you where I would say ideally these dogs would stop doing it altogether, right? So
Okay.
in order to hit that point, we have to make a couple of very small adjustments to how you're handling this. So right now, basically,
Yeah.
when they're chasing things, you could tell them to stop or you could tell them to come. And then if they don't listen to that, you're giving a correction for that, right? What that's doing though is communicating nothing to them about the prey drive. And all it's saying is you could chase these things until I tell you come or until I tell you stop, which is not what we're trying to communicate. So what
No.
I would do moving forward is anytime they start chasing something prey related, right? I would just give a correction for it. There's literally two things I want you to work on over the next week or
Yeah.
so. Thing number one is you're going to be correcting any chasing of animals, and
Yeah.
no, the correction is unavoidable. When they do it, you're telling them no, you're giving the correction. And here's the other kicker with it: correct all the way up on the e-collar. If you're already working at a 70, the difference
Yeah.
between 70 and 100 is so little. And I don't want you to run into a scenario where like 70 was just a little too low when they were chasing a deer or something like that.
Yeah.
But just put it all the way up for that stuff,
Yeah.
right?
And I have. They've used it and they've had it.
Simulate people coming over and trying to pet the dogs, have the muzzle on. No corrections for this just yet. Just see how it goes.
Okay. No corrections. Yep.
Be ready to advocate if they make the correct decision. So let's say they go to pet them and the dogs turn and go away when they're stressed out. Advocate at that point, obviously. Uh, but see what you get and do it on muzzle. And like I said, no corrections initially. And based on how that goes the next couple times you do it, we'll assess next steps of do we need to add in a correction for it? Do we need
Yeah.
to have them interact in a different way? We'll kind of
Yeah.
figure out what changes we need to make from there.